now. So,
Okay, Ron.
Okay, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our workshop this morning on creating language-rich classrooms for secondary ELLs around the hallmarks of advanced literacies of instruction. We're very pleased again to have Nancy Cloud, Professor Emeritus from the college, from Rhode Island College. Not only is she a professor extraordinaire who has, I will not begin to tell you how many years of experience she has, but needless to say, it's a lot. But more importantly, she's not only an expert, but she is also a prolific author. I think if you will Google her, you will find that she has written multiple books uh, around the instruction for English language learners. And I'm very pleased to welcome Nancy Cloud.
Oh, thank you, Ron. And I'm happy that all of you are here on a Saturday. It speaks very well to the type of professionals that all of you are. We're so happy to have you. And I do want to mention from the beginning that this workshop will earn the CTLEs. And so we'll be mentioning more about that at the end, but we'll make sure that all of you know how to do that if you're not aware of how to do that right now. So as we move forward, Ron's already told you the focus of our day, which is on creating language-rich classrooms for secondary ELLs. All of you are well aware that under Part 154, the first integrated class that occurs is ELA, which means that all of our students that are designated as English learners are in our ELA classes right from the beginning. And so today we'll talk about how to implement those instructional units of study, the ELA instructional units of study, making certain that we have a wide enough range of texts so that we can work with all of our English learners to advance their proficiency, build their academic vocabulary, and create opportunities for language use. And now we're quite aware that many of you are working not always offline in your classroom. Some of you are working quite a bit online, providing virtual instruction to your students. So we've added that into the day to think about how to do these things through by using remote learning tools. Okay, so we will be focused on how to do thematically related literary and informational texts. And I really believe that all of your ELA units include both types of text in the same unit that you're working with. For some reason, my clicker's not working, but that's my problem. And I did want to mention to you that we will post the whole PowerPoint for you, because this is a Saturday. I want you to know that you can just relax, knowing that we'll post the PowerPoint and you'll be able to get it after today. We'll make sure that you all know how to do that. It's possible we'll put it on the Padlet, but we might also just put it on the NYU resources page. So this is the other thing we hope that you noticed is we've created a Padlet for today. And there's a second part to this, as you all know, you signed up for 2 parts. The second part will happen on February 27th. And we've created a Padlet where we'll post all of the handouts. There's a short address and there's a long address right there for you. And it was sent to you along with the Zoom link. So hopefully you saw that and you downloaded the material for today. And I also want you to notice that I've put resources on every single slide. And so I hope that you will download the PowerPoint, because there are links and other things that might be useful to you in the future that are not on the Padlet, but are on the slides. Not sure why this is not working. Okay, so we'll start with foundations. I'm going to introduce a model unit to you that will represent the type of units that I believe all of you are implementing in ELA classes. And as you know, in New York State, there's a heavy emphasis on the social studies content in our ELA units because of the emphasis that New York has on that. I'll be sharing with you particular documents from the advanced literacy skills work that started in New York State in 2016 and 2017. And we'll look at the documents that are listed there for you, because those are kind of our marching orders of the type of language that we're trying to develop in our students. Then we'll take a look at the text set that's recommended to us. I will be using an expeditionary learning unit as my model, but even if you're using Wit and Wisdom or some other curriculum, they are organized in the same ways. And they were written primarily for native speakers or largely for native speakers. And so they do have what they consider lower lexile text that they put into each unit, but they don't go all the way down to text that might work for our entering students. Okay, those are not typically included in our unit. So we'll talk about how to analyze what is in the text sets for a unit, and then how to expand as we need to for our students that are at other proficiency levels. From there, once we have our unit established, we'll talk about teaching the text and how to get language and content in for all of our English learners, including the kids that are entering and emerging, which is sometimes really our big challenge. We'll focus today on Hallmark 4, which is studying a small set of high utility words to build breadth and depth of knowledge. And we'll also focus on building discussion skills, which is Hallmark 2, and how to support our English learners in class discussions. And then at the very end, I will have resources for you, including I will have a list of all of the technology that I model for you today and the links to that technology. Okay, so it will all be available to you. So this is the unit that I decided to use for our work. And in other times that we've put middle school and high school together, because we've been doing a lot of work together, I've always chosen ninth grade or an early high school grade, because I was trying to make it work for middle school teachers. But today I decided to show the upper middle school level and eighth grade ELA unit, just to be fair. And I wanted to mention that the unit that I'm going to share with you is quite similar to other units that exist at the high school level. So the one that I'm going to share with you deals with Inside Out and Back Again. That's the novel. It's a novel in verse. And it's about the experience of Vietnamese people during the Vietnam War, and specifically the end of the Vietnam War and becoming refugees. And it also includes informational text about the Vietnam War. And I wanted you to know, if you do work at the high school level, it's not that different than what goes on in your grade 10 unit, where you're reading the letter from Martin Luther King from Birmingham jail. And while you learn about human rights, search warrants, right to privacy, and all of those elements that have to do with the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. So I can't show every unit and I can't show every curriculum. And so all of you are going to have to make the leap into your own curriculum and be thinking about that as we go along. But I do believe that this unit is representative of what happens for all of you at all of the grade levels. And I hope that you'll feel that way as we go along. So the big point is that it models units that include fiction and informational text, and often multimedia. And in the case of those of you that are using Wit and Wisdom uses a lot of photographs. So if, in case you are using Wit and Wisdom, I wanted to mention that in grade 5, there are units that are very similar to the one that I'm going to share with you. In grade 5, module 3, it treats the Civil War and literature that deals with that period, and also informational text that deals with the Civil War. In grade 7, it deals with World War II and literature that treats that period in history. And in grade 8, it deals with World War I and also literature that deals with that period. So especially in middle level, but also in high school level, whatever curriculum you're using in ELA, I think that this unit that I'm going to model is not that different than what goes on for all of you. Okay, and I also want to go back and pick up the work that has been going on in New York State having to do with advanced literacy skills. This work was led by Nani Lasso and the New York State Education Department. Hopefully all of you are familiar with it, but I just want to pick that up again because we don't want to lose sight of that. And we don't want to lose sight of that with all the complications that we have of teaching online. This is another piece that we don't want to lose track of. And so we are going to experiment today. We hope that it will work well in using a whiteboard for all of us to collaborate during this workshop. We're going to do this several times during the presentation. And so I want to show you a short instructional clip of how, if you happen to be using Zoom, you yourselves could be using the whiteboard feature to have your students collaborate. If you're not using Zoom and you're using instead Google Classroom, I wanted you to know that the same exists in the Jamboard extension. So this is a technique that I'm going to use today, but that you could also use with your students when working remotely to get them to collaborate and to have participation other than breakout rooms, which I think all of you are quite familiar with. So the reason that we're watching the video is to make sure to bring us all together. Some of you might know how to use the whiteboard, but in case some of you don't know how to use the whiteboard, we want to make sure that everybody is included in the activity. Okay, so I'm going to show you a short video of how to use the whiteboard feature in Zoom, because that's what we're on today. And just know that this also exists in Google Chrome through Jamboard.
Increase student engagement by using the screen share, whiteboard, and annotation tools during live Zoom classes. Hey, I'm Jessica and welcome to Being Classy. Tools like share screen, whiteboard, and annotations in Zoom are great components to consider adding as part of your overall engagement strategy in virtual learning. This video will show these tools being used in Zoom specifically. I will go through these tools for Google Meets in another video, so be sure to subscribe to my channel in order to stay up to date with all my new content. Let's jump in. Making the most of your tool. If your school is using Zoom for online learning, you can increase student engagement by getting your students actively involved in the learning process. Not just watching, sitting, reading, or even sleeping, but participating and doing. Let's say you want students to engage in a warm-up activity or a brainstorming session. Consider sharing your whiteboard in your Zoom class to have students annotate the screen. Let's take a look at what this actually looks like. If you're in Zoom as the host, you can navigate down to the green Share Screen button. By navigating here, you'll have a few options. I want to share my whiteboard, so I'm going to click Whiteboard and Share on the bottom right-hand corner. Now, students are viewing this whiteboard. The toolbar will automatically appear on the host, whoever is sharing their screen. But this is what students will see, and you will need to prompt them to click on View Options on the top, and then a drop-down menu will come up. Tell them to click on Annotate. By doing this, the Zoom toolbox will then appear on their screen. They'll have the capability to draw, type, or post stamps onto the whiteboard. You'll know that they found it when things start coming up on the whiteboard. If you notice here, a student has found their drawing tool. My free download that accompanies this video is a quick reference guide you can give to students or display in your Zoom room to better assist students to understand how to share screen, use the whiteboard, and annotation tool. I love using the whiteboard.
Okay, and she goes on to say that she uses it as a graffiti board and just lets everybody post in a graffiti way on the board. And the video continues. It's much longer than what I'm sharing with you, but I just put what we needed to see to be able to use the whiteboard. So just to repeat, you're going to go, because we're going to do this in a second, we're going to be using the whiteboard after I show you another video of Nani Lasso, and you're going to click under View Options. Then you're going to click on Annotate. It won't be in that position. They must have moved it around, but wherever the word Annotate appears, just click on it. So you click on View Options, you click on Annotate. This bar will come up allowing you to type. I'm asking you to use the T for text, and a text box will appear, and then you'll type your response into the box. And one thing that you have to do after you've typed in the box, it won't show until you hit your return button on your computer, okay? So just to repeat, you click on view options, you click on annotate, the bar comes up, you click on the T for text, you type in the text box, and then you hit return. Okay, so I'll repeat this again after we watch this next video. So what I'd like you to do now, that's funny, Antoine, this is still there from me. We could get rid of the hello, it doesn't need to be there. We will talk now, we'll listen to Nani Lasso talk about why focus on advanced literacy skills and very specifically in linguistically diverse schools. And while she speaks, I'd like you to take notes while you listen. Like, what's the reason? Why should we care about advanced literacy skills? And why should we care a lot about this in linguistically diverse? Okay, people are typing and testing. If you can stop because it's showing on the screen.
Actually, no, I think that's just part of the program because I'm not sharing the widescreen right now.
How funny. So look at where it's going to block our screen.
No. That's just the video. You can just go to the next slide.
I have to play the video.
Yeah, play it.
All right. Well, I hope those aren't still going to be there on top of her face. Okay, so everyone will do the best you can. Here we go. And just take notes of why we need to focus on this on advanced literacy skills.
Hi, Jeff Smith, Baltimore School District. You just mentioned something about language and it may not map easily to school.
Right.
Can you expand on that a little bit? We have a lot of Spanish-speaking students in Arizona and other countries.
Right. I think you probably read that on that slide with the Venn diagram, that there are certain risk factors associated with children who grow up in poverty and children who may come from households where English is not the language of instruction and who enter school and English is the language of instruction. The home language, whether it's English or in this case Spanish, doesn't always lend itself easily to the language that the sixth grader is up against in text. So that is to say that we don't speak necessarily the way the textbook authors and other authors are writing these days. And the gap between our daily language, even among those of us who are educated, and the language of print is on the rise. It's increasing year to year. And I just saw recently some really nice data that suggests we just continue to write and to demand an academic register of language that is very distant in many cases from the language that our children are using day to day. And so in that sense, it puts onto the system the need to really teach and unpack the language that is being used in print that is giving kids a really hard time. If we go back to those data in all of the studies that we're doing, I should be very clear that our students have very well-developed day-to-day conversational English, both our native English speakers and our students who might be considered English language learners or former English language learners. Their difficulties are when they are reading independently and having to learn from text in order to do their work independently, that they just don't have enough to bring to that printed page. Does that make sense? So we are getting this gap that's, even you and the article that I was reading suggested the newspaper still, even though everyone's complaining about newspapers and the language today and the rags that they are, they're using about 70 academic words per 100, and we are using about 17 per 100 when we speak to one another, right? We're speaking less, our sentences are shorter, our communication is just not as academic, and it used to be that it was much more closely mapping on to print than it is today. And some of the college and career ready standards are pushing on that idea, that we need just more complex language in our classrooms and outside of our classrooms.
Okay, so I hope despite the little print on the screen, and this is our first time experimenting with this, you were able to get the drift of what she was sharing with us about why we need so much, especially as middle and high school teachers, to be working on developing in our students advanced literacy skills. Not just requiring it in our classrooms, but actually developing it. Okay, so now here we go again with the instructions, and I'm going to ask.
Hi, Nancy, Clara, I'm sorry. Could you see if you can click clear on your whiteboard and see if that clears it up?
Okay, but let me I have to stop sharing to do that,
Yeah,
Antoine.
if you can stop sharing and just clear the,
Okay.
There's a trash conductor cloud, and then you say all clear.
Well, there's nothing on my screen. I don't know. I don't know why that happened, but let's not lose time. I think we can, stop.
you try it again and see what happened.
Somebody said it's on the same task bar as the annotate bar. Dr. Cloud, if that helps.
Share.
Yeah, I think it's just a bug. That's it. It's okay now, Nancy.
It's all right now?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, so are you just seeing my screen?
We see share your thoughts, what impressed you most.
Yes, that's what you should see.
Okay.
Okay, good. All right, we're back. So I wanted to repeat the instructions for you. That first you click view options, you select annotate. The bar will come up, you click on the text, a text box will come up, you type in the box, but then the important thing is you have to hit return or your comment will not show. So now we're going to go to the whiteboard. And if you're a middle school teacher, what impressed you the most from the video of Nani Lasso? If this doesn't work in the future, we'll just use the chat box. So you might have to expand your text box for us to see your full comment. Yeah, wasn't that interesting that even in newspapers, there are 70 per 100 words are academic words, but in our speech, we're not seeing that, right? So conversational vocabulary and even the vocabulary of newspaper articles, a lot of you mentioned that. She's saying all people, yes, she's saying even educated people are using less academic language in speaking. Now, as teachers, we're probably a unique population and we might use more academic language, but just in conversing with one another in the hallways and so forth, I'm sure we're not using a ton of academic language unless we're talking about academic topics. Yes, and one of you is typing that the problem comes when ELLs and all students work independently with text. So that was a really big point that she made. Okay, and right, and also the length of our utterances is shorter. Okay, so we can stop putting the comments, but thank you all of you who participated. I think we've demonstrated for all of you in the chat box. We can go back, Antoine, get out of the share screen of the whiteboard and go back. You can see it's a little cumbersome. Are you still seeing my screen?
Actually, you have to share again, Nancy.
Okay.
Yeah, because once we get out of the whiteboard, you have to share again.
Okay, so let me stop the share. Gee, it's not giving me the option. Oh, okay, let's try this. Are you seeing my screen again?
Yes,
Yep.
review how to share.
Okay, yeah, good. So you caught all of the most important things and we were able to show you. It was a little awkward today. It's our first time doing the whiteboard, so you'll have to forgive us for that. But you can see the kids can type and this is a way that you could have them participate and all of us would get better at this as we do it more routinely. So yes, she was saying that students' language is not mapping well, their everyday language is not mapping well onto school language. And you might say, well, that was always true. But the gap is getting wider. That was her point, that even educated people are using shorter sentences. This could be the effect of text messaging, who knows? But we really have to teach and unpack the academic language. And so this was like my justification for going back to the advanced literacy skills. But like this work is still very relevant. We shouldn't leave it behind. It's very, very critical. And so on this particular slide, I've given you the links to where you can find all of the briefs that were developed back in 2017 and rolled out then. And I posted for you some of them actually onto the Padlet, but not this one. This introductory one, this is the address to it, and I have it on the screen just to mention that outdated assumptions were that students learning academic language at school was just a small subpopulation, that most kids by middle and high school had a lot of academic language because they've been in school since kindergarten. But actually now, because of the linguistic diversity and because we have new arrivals all the time, especially in New York City, there's a lot of kids that speak languages other than English. And by 2030, 40% of the school-age population will speak a language other than English at home. So they might not have been exposed since kindergarten to academic English. And we're starting for the first time as middle and high school teachers. Also, there was an assumption that the instructional core, as kids went through the grades and advanced through the grades and now get to secondary level, were prepared for advanced literacy tasks. But now we're finding that no, a lot of kids are not prepared for, and the instructional core needs to be working on this. And then finally, it was thought that only a few students were struggling, but actually we know that there could be large numbers of students who are struggling with really rigorous text that we're exposing them to in our secondary classrooms. So this was kind of the guiding document talking about why this work is needed. And this is the full range of all of the briefs that exist. And so we will talk about Hallmark 1, engaging texts. We'll talk about what goes into reading comprehension for those texts. After texts are read, you all know very well that in our ELA classrooms, we expect kids to discuss the text, and we also expect them to acquire new academic vocabulary and language. And so we do want to look today at our units of study and how this all occurs, and what engaging texts are already suggested to us and what additional ones we might need. So this is another critical anchor brief on what goes into reading comprehension. And I'm sharing this with you in relation to our unit, just to remind you that, especially as teachers working with English learners, we can't forget about the important, we can't just jump to meaning-based skills like building background knowledge. Yes, that's important and we will do that. But there's more, they also have to learn how to break the English code. So I want to show you what that would look like as they're reading a text about the Vietnam War. So here we are, and let's say they're reading this text, History and Pictures, about the Vietnam War. I just took a few summary paragraphs about the Vietnam War, and I want to show you the kinds of code-based skills, the breaking the code skills that could exist for second language readers. They might not know how to read a word like fight. Like, you can't phonetically decode that word. It's a sight word. And there's so many words like that in English: might, fight, right. And you know this well as teachers. So we want to anticipate some of those code-based skills that we might have to introduce ahead of the fact. Then there could be phonemes like vowel digraphs, like the oo in troop, or the e in increase, reach, and agreement, and lovely English. It's not always spelled the same way, but it sounds the same way. Then there's the double consonants that we use in English, and when we need them and when we don't need them. So in battle and communist and support, I need double consonants. Maybe the students, when they're writing, don't know to do that. And finally, there's how in English we read numerals in text, because we have statistical data that's reported in this passage, and we also have years that events occurred. And we don't say 1,968, right? But we do say 500,000. So these are all the kinds of code-based skills that we might have to tackle a little bit before we start, we might want to highlight some of these things with students in addition to all of the meaning-based skills. So of course, we all know we have to build background, make sure they know the countries that were involved, the political factions in Vietnam. They have to know something about communism because that's the whole premise of this war, to try to stop nations from becoming communistic countries. There's all the war terms. There's the understanding of the passive voice. This says the Vietnam War was fought. We don't know who the fighters were. It's not an active sentence, it's a passive sentence. And those are tricky for second language learners. Then there's all the metacognitive, reading strategies we want to teach. And next time in February, we'll really dig into that, the metacognitive strategies that we want to be teaching our students. And finally, there's interest and motivation, and boy, is that big now online, whether we can really engage students and get them interested and get them motivated to learn about this period in history and to enjoy the novels that are part of our unit. So while I will be emphasizing the meaning-based skills today that are listed there at the bottom that we just talked about, especially helping ELLs to understand abstract and complex ideas in advanced academic text and to produce academic language in their own writing and their own speaking, please don't forget about the code-based skills, because all of the things, I mean, how are they going to write something if they don't know how to spell it? How are they going to engage in read alouds and sharing information if they don't know how to speak a word? This is all very important to our English language learners. Okay, so we will talk about how to work with engaging texts that feature big ideas. Then Hallmark 2, how we're going to engage our ELLs in classroom discussions, build that vocabulary. And then one of the hallmarks that's not really talked about enough is Hallmark 5, which is creating and using school-wide protocols to support reading, writing, listening, and speaking. So I just realized I forgot to tell you a housekeeping thing, which is I will take a break. We will take a 10-minute break around 10:30. Okay, so for those of you that need to get up, I just wanted you to know we will take, all of us will take a 10-minute break around 10:30. Okay, I won't forget that. So now we're going to do a poll. And you will have 3 choices. We want everyone to participate in the poll. And Antoine will post the poll in a second. I do want to mention that if you're not using Zoom, that you could use a website called Poll Everywhere. And anyone can use Poll Everywhere. So if you're not using Zoom, and many of you are not, then you could substitute Poll Everywhere in order to do a poll such as we are going to show you in Zoom. So the first choice that you have, and you can only answer either A or B or C, is, are most texts that you use with your multilingual learners extremely challenging or completely inaccessible because they're so far above grade level, they can't even engage in the text? Or equally problematic, are the texts so below level that then when the kids get to grade level text, such as when they take statewide exams, they're not ready? Or do you have a lot of multiple texts at many different readability levels and you're all set because you have jumping in places for everyone in your classroom? Okay, so hopefully some of you are answering. We have about a third of you have answered so far. Keep answering. We're getting closer to full participation. Thank you so much. Okay, I'll stop it when we get, Anton, we can stop it when we get to 90% of people have voted. Are people still answering? We'll give it a few more seconds. Okay, go ahead now, Antoine, because I'm not sure if everybody's at their screen. So we'll share with you the poll results, and you can see that for more than half of you, you feel that the curriculum is so far above your kids, it's just noise. They can't possibly partake of the curriculum at the level that it's written. But luckily, we also have about 40% of you who are saying, no, you have a good range of text. So that's great. I'm so happy to see that. And so we can stop the poll, Antoine. Do I also need to stop share?
Okay, I stopped sharing.
Okay, it's still showing.
Okay, hold on. Okay, can you still see it, Nancy?
Yep. Okay, let me try to stop. Let me try to stop and then start again to share screen. Okay, so are you seeing my screen again?
Yes,
Yep.
we see the poll.
Yes.
Yes, okay. So you could see that a lot of us answered A and some of us answered C, and I'm so happy to see that 40% of you said you do have sufficient range of text for your students. But of course, this could vary because the people who answered A might be working with entering and emerging students for which the Common Core folks never really provided text at that lower level for people that needed to work in English, but at an entering and emerging level of proficiency with students. So one of the things all of us want to make sure is that the range of our text reaches all of our students. And so now we're going to talk a bit about that because that's critical. Okay, and I want to mention that this all has to do with Hallmark 1. Every document from the advanced literacy folks that's called a hallmark, it's a hallmark of instructional practices. And here it's talking about 8 indicators that our curriculum should meet. And the first thing that it's talking about is that obviously whatever text we're using should feature the essential knowledge that students need to answer the big questions or the big ideas or the essential questions. We should use many, many text types with multiple levels of difficulty and definitely multiple perspectives when it comes to this unit on the Vietnam War, but all units. That's why I made this kind of a yellow text to kind of highlight it heavily. And they also need to be of high interest to readers so that we can easily engage our readers. They're motivated to read them. This sometimes is a problem for us. We want to make sure that students can share alternative interpretations and that they are using evidence to support claims. That should sound like something you're asked to do all the time, and that they have opportunities to answer text-dependent questions. So I did want to show you this model because I think that sometimes we're not reminding ourselves as to why the Common Core folks and the people that built their units like Wit and Wisdom around the Common Core marching orders, why did they create the units the way they did? Well, it was because of this model that was the driver for the Common Core ELA work, where they felt that you as ELA/ENL teachers should be always choosing a worthy text. That's the centerpiece. And then kids should think about it, talk about it, read it, of course, and write about it. And this is another picture of the same model. And I'd like you to just kind of have this as a big picture imprinted on your brain. This is what you should be doing with your ELLs as you're working through the ELA units. Make sure that you're putting in the middle a worthy text that kids will think about, read it, then talk about it, and then write about it. Okay, and one of the other things that the Common Core folks offered us was this model of text complexity, where I want to stress, it's not all about lexiles or guided reading levels, even though we have those expectations for at what level 8th graders should be reading or 10th graders should be reading. And by the way, the lexile range gets compacted once you get to middle school. In elementary school, there's leaps that kids are supposed to make across, especially from second to third, third to fourth, fifth to sixth. But once you get to middle school and high school, the Lexile levels don't change a lot. They change some, but they don't change as dramatically as they do in the elementary grades. But the quantitative measures that we have, such as Lexile, are what I call linguistic machinations. They compute things like word length, syllable, number of syllables, word frequency, sentence length, and they generate a Lexile based on all of those things that are true about the text itself. But it matters equally the qualitative features of text, how many visuals are on a page, how well the visuals match the text on the page, if there are headings and subheadings, is there bolding and italicizing. All of that is qualitative aspects. The amount of print per page, this is sometimes discouraging to our English learners. And then there's the reader and task considerations that if a child comes from Guatemala, one of our students is coming from Guatemala, well, what do they really know about this period of the Vietnam War and how important that was in American history? That isn't the history they were studying in Guatemala if they're new arrivals. Right? So all of these things matter, who the reader is, what the text is, and what the task that they're going to be asked to do afterwards. And so I want you to hold fast to this model of text complexity, because sometimes people will say to you, why are you using such a low Lexile book? But it could have other features that make it rigorous for your students and content rich for your students. And so don't forget about that. It's really, really important. And it's not some model we made up in ESL. It is the Common Core model. Okay, so we're going to try the whiteboard one more time. And now I would like you, if you're a high school teacher, to please answer, why do we need multiple texts at different levels, especially entry-level texts, for entering and emerging ELLs? So remember, you click on view options, you select annotate, you click on text, and in your own classrooms, if you wouldn't have Zoom, then you would use Jamboard. So can we erase this, Antoine? Okay, let's get started. Please leave comments if you're a high school teacher. Why do you need multiple level text? Remember to hit enter after you type. Somebody's drawing for us. Please use the T for text box to type a response. Right, so somebody's saying students are at different proficiency levels. So yes, we need, and I want you to think of this as stair steps that kids can climb, but we need that entry stair step. They can't just jump into the top stair. They have to, right, some students come late to the United States. The background and literacy skills are quite diverse. They don't need to be frustrated as we start the unit. Absolutely, we need them to engage in the unit. And if you do have entering and emerging students, we need a starting place for them. It needs to be accessible for everyone. This is the whole premise with equitable teaching, that we need access for all. That is the premise of universal design for learning. Okay, great, great ideas. Thank you so much. And so let's get back out of the whiteboard. And we will continue, but thank you for all your wonderful ideas about how we are going to use the whiteboard.
Nancy, you have to share again.
I know, I'm trying. Okay, so are we back to the screen?
Yep.
Thank you so much, everyone, for sharing. And you can see that we got more nimble on our second whiteboard than we were on the first one. I'm talking about those of us working from the NYU platform. So yes, these are some of the things you said: to give all students access to valued content, multiple entry points, to create a context for building academic language and advancing language proficiency. We want them to understand the topic or theme by deepening their knowledge across text. We want them to develop reading comprehension, and we want them to be able to discuss and write. They won't be able to do that if we don't have an access point for everyone. And so we want everyone, this is language from advanced literacy folks, we want to make sure they're on a path to access advanced grade level concepts. And we want to make sure that they're viewing different perspectives. Different texts are going to have different perspectives. And we want to select appropriate mentor text. Mentor text can be used for author's craft, but it can also be used for language development. We can show them how sentences are put together, how passages are put together. So we can use mentor text to advance language complexity, but we need a starting place for entering and emerging students. So we want to choose, this is again, well, let me back up. New York City created its own document that I put on Padlet, and it's leading advanced literacy instruction, but to promote ELL students' achievement. So I want you to really be looking at that document, because it's hitting the nail on the head for us as people delivering ELA curriculum to ENL students. And they're suggesting to us that we choose key excerpts or fragments to support deep study of the unit's content and concepts, and I'll be modeling that. And then that we teach the language so that students will need to generate oral and written responses, that we, so interesting to me when it works and when it doesn't, that we be sure that students are doing most of the heavy lifting, that we're not talking so much. One of the challenges for ENL people is that we just keep talking. We're so worried about giving comprehensible input that we don't let the students talk. So we have to leave blank spaces in our classrooms for the students to be using language. And in order to get all students to speak, routines and protocols will assist us. So these are the specific points that are made in the New York City document. They say the instructor should always communicate the purpose for why they're reading the text. You should require text-based evidence to support any claims that students are making. You should make sure that students have lots of opportunities to answer text-dependent questions. Then as it regards Hallmark 2, the discussion skills, you should make sure that student discussion, even for entering and emerging students, is a part of every lesson, and that students are asked to use that academic language when they engage in discussions. And then when it comes to Hallmark 4, the academic vocabulary, we should give multiple exposures to the target words that we're concentrating on, make sure that we require use of those terms. So I will be trying to model this for you. So now, back to thinking about our engaging text, this is exactly what we just said, that we want to choose key excerpts or fragments to support deep study of the unit concepts. We want to teach that language so students will need to generate oral and written responses to understand and to talk about the text, and then also to give them protocols. The protocol piece isn't being talked about enough. What are our protocols that we're using with students? What routines and protocols support their work? So of course this involves graphic organizers, but it could also be routines. Next time I'm going to talk to you about the routine, talk, read, talk, write. And it's a specific protocol that you could follow in your classroom that would require listening, speaking, reading, and writing. So we'll engage in that routine next time. But we need ways of them to for them to practice language and recycle the concept. So I did put Hallmark 1 onto the Padlet so you could just download it, and hopefully you did today. The first part is to choose those experts and teach the language, and then finally to make sure that they're producing language by the protocols and routines that we use. So we, in our units, want to make sure that we create a literacy environment that is structured. They know what our structures are, that's highly interactive. This is the challenge of remote teaching. How do we make it highly interactive? And you see that we attempted that so far today with the whiteboard. that it's engaging for all students and that it provides the type of repetition that is needed in order to support ELL students. So this is another very important part. I'm just going to highlight the box at the bottom, that all of your units should follow this knowledge building cycle, starting with essential questions, providing a range of text, identifying a core set of vocabulary words, and providing practice with those words. Something that your units does not do, that I want to urge you to do, is to differentiate the vocabulary for students of different proficiency levels. They identify a core set of vocabulary and they say you should do it with everybody. And I don't think that's true. I think you should select a core set of vocabulary for different proficiency levels of students, a set for entering and emerging, a set for transitioning that might include some of the core set that they recommend. And then once you get to expanding and commanding, fine, go along with the core set that they identify. Then to plan the learning tasks and the school-wide protocols that you're going to use across listening, speaking, reading, and writing to ensure content mastery. Okay, I will fix this clicker issue when we take a break in a half hour. So this is one possible school-wide protocol that you could use. And I put this eye chart on the Padlet because I think it would work for many, many, many of your units. And the way that this would work, we would pose questions, the essential questions across the top, and then we would allow students to write what they already know in relation to those essential questions. And then as they read the different sources that we assign to them based on their proficiency level, they would answer the questions, the unit essential questions. And they could also dig up other interesting facts and maybe identify some new questions that they have. And it ends with them summarizing what they learned across all of their sources, answers the essential questions of the unit. So hopefully you can see how this eye chart or inquiry chart, which I downloaded from the adlit.org site. I want to mention that to you as a resource. There's a lot of great resources on adlit.org, especially as it regards graphic organizers to support your work with students. And I also wanted to mention the work of Doug Fisher and Nancy Frey, and they identified 7 literacy strategies or protocols that they use in San Diego, California schools that really elevated the school-wide average reading level of all of their students. And it's a highly, highly diverse district, as you could imagine. San Diego's just across the border from Mexico. One of them was Cornell Notes, that they insisted that everyone in their school had to use Cornell Notes for note-taking in science, social studies, math, and ELA and health and whatever other subjects they were taking. And because everybody was using the same format for note-taking, kids got better at it. And they had other protocols that they recommended. So this work is from 2002. Wow, it's almost 20 years old. And yet it's work that we need to remember, because when you use a school-wide protocol, if I'm the only one in the school who uses an eye chart, it'll have some benefit to the students. But if everybody in all of the units across the school uses eye charts to guide the instruction and returns to it at the end instead of a KWL chart that's used at the elementary level, well, the kids are going to get really good at using this chart, and they're going to have this framework in their mind when they enter the units that we're teaching. So now, before we begin, now I'd like you to use the chat box, and we'll give it a minute, and then Maria Diaz is going to read for us some of the units that you mentioned in the chat box. You're all using different curricula. Some are using expeditionary learning, some are using wit and wisdom, some of you might be using something else entirely. But I would like you to type the name of a unit that you actually use. It's your unit. You have to teach it. Maybe you're teaching it now, and it includes both literary and informational text. So please type in the talk box, and then in 1 minute, I'll ask Maria to share with us some of the units that you mentioned. Okay, Maria, tell us some of the units they're mentioning.
Well, I see Esperanza Rising, some books, The House on Mango Street,
Yeah,
Teaching Tolerance, Summer of the Mariposas.
okay. Any others?
Yes, the autobiography of Malcolm X, a unit on the impact of imperialism.
Okay, fantastic. So
American Arguments.
wonderful, wonderful. So all of you can keep looking at the chat box and what people are typing in, but I wanted to trigger that you thought about a unit that you are teaching so that you could realize all of the strategies that I'm going to start sharing with you should work for the unit that you are responsible for next or that you're teaching right now. So while I will keep modeling with this 8th grade unit, I want you to constantly be thinking about your unit, the one that you're teaching right now or will be teaching. So the first thing that I would tell you is non-negotiable about your unit. Let me just make sure I didn't skip anything. My unit, remember, is War Coming Close to Home, Finding Home, the Refugee Experience, and they're learning about the Vietnam War. And so I wanted you to be thinking about a unit that you teach that does the same thing. Now, I really want you to focus in on the fact that the skills that are listed, the standards that are listed in my mind in every unit are not negotiable. You're not bargaining with those. Those are the things that you want to make happen, irrespective of how much you change the text that students are going to use. You might use one of the below level texts that's mentioned in the unit, or you might add your own text because you see that it doesn't span wide enough for the students that you're teaching. But these are some of the reading skills that are included in the unit that I'm modeling with. And I think these are common standards that we work on to cite text evidence, to determine the meaning of words and phrases, to determine the central idea of a text and so forth. And remember that L is literature and I is informational text. So these are some of them. Now, sometimes they list like, I'm gonna exaggerate, like 50 different standards. Well, you can't do 50 standards all at once. So you need to decide which are primary and hang on to those primary reading standards and make sure that they happen. And sometimes, because it's an 8-week unit, you can change what standard you're focused on across the activities that you're doing. That's another good way to work. These are, this is just a single writing one, but it has a lot of subparts. And whatever they put in as the writing standard, that's not negotiable. You have to work on it, but you have to make it work for the proficiency level of your students. And so that's where you're going to vary the way that they're going to work on it. Okay, and then finally, there are speaking and listening activities that they have, but they were not thinking necessarily about English learners when they crafted these speaking skills, and you're going to have to go deeper into the language aspects of the speaking skills. They just want kids to prepare for discussions, to follow the rules of discussions, to pose questions, to acknowledge information others share that's new to them, and so forth. Well, yeah, well, where are they going to get this language from and the speaking that they're going to do? How are they going to do that speaking? What scaffolding and supports are we going to give them to do that speaking, especially if they're entering, emerging, and transitioning? And then under language, they do talk about developing that academic language. So you're all familiar with these standards. Just remember that in my mind, this is not negotiable. These are the driving force. You can reduce them a little bit and or let me say streamline them and focus in on the most important ones, but you do have to do them. And then some of the things that came up in the unit that I'm modeling with were the close reading. I think that's big across all of your units. Understanding how a character's actions reveal aspects of his or her character. Finding the central idea of an informational text and all the important details. Analyzing the impact of word choice, especially in literature. Using context clues. You can't teach every single word that kids don't know. So how are they going to figure out the meanings of words that you're not directly teaching them? And then summarizing portions of a text or summarizing the most important things that went on in a chapter of a book and so forth. So These are the literary and informational central texts that were part of the unit that I'm modeling with. And what's lovely about Inside Out and Back Again is that it shares the Vietnamese perspective, and it is a first-person account of living through the period that started in 1975 with the fall of Saigon and going forward, and the escape of this family and their move to Alabama and what it was like to be a refugee during that period. You can see that the Lexile level is 800, which looks below level for 8th grade. It's around a 4th or 5th grade reading level, but not really when you look at the language of this text. And so the Common Core folks realized that, and they modeled it by choosing this text, that this is rigorous text because it is a novel in verse. It's a unique genre of a novel in verse, a narrative in verse. And so it's some difficult language that kids are going to have to handle. And the central text for informational text is this Todd Olson piece, a 5-page document, 6-page document on the Vietnam War that was published in 1995. And the Common Core people in expeditionary learning never tell us what the reading level is. So I'm going to show you how to get a reading level for things that are not leveled, just so you can know what level it is. And I also want you to be able to do this for websites. A lot of you are sending kids to websites and asking them to read certain things without knowing the reading level of the text. You can eyeball it and say, oh, that looks okay. Or, oh, that I think I can use it. It'll take some work, but I think I can use it. Or sometimes you avoid certain websites because you're sure that the kids can't do it. And I want you to think about this on an oral level. This is the writing level, but think about it on a speech level where Lexile doesn't apply. But if we're going to use websites that give us video, how is that video? And will kids be able to understand the video that we're sending them to? And we'll take a look at that today too. And I want you to think about it. If you're an 8th grade teacher and you teach this unit, great, you're happy, you're seeing everything that relates to you. But if you're not that teacher and you're not doing this unit, or you're done with this unit, or this unit hasn't come up yet, then you need to think about all of the premises that I will be sharing with you from now on in relation to your unit, okay? So I do want to mention to you that one of the nice features about this book is that there's a lot of translanguaging connections, and it's between English and Vietnamese. So one of the things that's really lovely about this book is that the author uses a lot of Vietnamese vocabulary. The author does not translate words that were never meant to be translated. And this allows us to teach our students how they could use translanguaging as a literary device. I want you to think about that, because a lot of what we've been thinking about in translanguaging is just how and when we can use native language to support learning. But I want you to actually think about it as kids are writing, how they could use it as a literary device in their own writing. Okay, and then they could analyze, well, why do you think the author did not translate this word? Why do you think the author did leave it in the native language? And then make sure that we remind our learners they could use this as a literary device. Okay, so it's a really neat book. So now I want to stress 4 approaches for how you could deliver any content, any unit. We're today thinking about ELA, but if you're a social studies teacher, a science teacher, you teach some other content in addition to ELA or instead of ELA. I want you to think about these 4 ways that we could deliver a unit to English learners. And the first one is for entering and emerging ELLs, we could use native language text in lieu of the English text. So we would be looking for native language version of the texts that are primary in the unit, or we could carefully select some entry-level second language text for entering and emergent students, but we also have to choose some grade level excerpts. So I will show you today how I would choose from Inside Out and Back Again, which is above above the level of entering and emerging students. It's not an entry point for them, but I don't want them to never be exposed to the grade level literature. I want them to at least see some of it. So that's one way I could deliver a unit. A second way I could deliver a unit for high emerging and transitioning students is to find a simplified or adapted text. And I'll show you where I would look for those. A third way I could work is deep chapter reads. There's a lot of vignettes in our novel, and there is another novel that we'll be taking a look at called Goodbye Vietnam that's divided into chapters. We could read certain chapters of Goodbye Vietnam, plus we could summarize some others just so that we could move at the same rate that the class is moving for the native speakers. Okay, so I would do deep chapter reads, plus I would skip some chapters, not read everything, but I would look at summaries to carry the novel forward so that students finish at the same time as their native speaking age mates. Or with transitioning and up, I could use the original text and the below level text that are mentioned in the unit, plus offer them audio and video support for the novel, ways that they can hear the text in addition to read the text, have it spoken to them as much as them trying to process the writing. Okay, so these are 4 ways that I could work on delivering the unit to my ELLs. And I tried to show you what ways I would offer to kids at different proficiency levels. Now I want to show you a little video, and you can react to this in the chat box. I will not have us share what you type in the chat box, but I do want you to type in the chat box and look at each other's comments. These are suggested ways from an ELA professional, a TESOL professional, how she recommends you use translanguaging in the ELA classroom, okay, when and how you should do it. You want to remember that Ofelia Garcia's, Kate Seltzer, and Susana Ibarra Johnson are the names behind this whole phenomena of the translanguaging classroom. And now it's quite common in ELA environments. So let's take a listen and type in the chat box, react to what's being shared. Would you use it? Do you think it's a good way to work? What would you not use and why, and so forth? Oh, sorry.
The first time I heard a description of translanguaging, I was like, what? No way. What is this crazy idea about mixing languages and letting the students use whatever they want in the classroom? I'm a university-trained language teacher, and my whole methodological background was founded on the principle of target language in the classroom. After extensive research and study, I realized that it isn't as crazy as it sounds. The crux of pedagogical translanguaging is accepting that languages can work together in the classroom rather than in competition, and teachers can plan strategically for students to use 2 languages for learning. There are many strategies teachers can use to integrate translanguaging into their classrooms. The first basic structure I train teachers to use is to vary the language of input, processing, and output in a learning cycle. An example. Imagine you are teaching a history class with learners from diverse language backgrounds. You allow the students to gather information on the topic in their own languages, and then bring them together for a group discussion in English about what they have learned. Then they work separately to write a story in their own language, and come together in groups again to rework the stories into English. In this way, they are building their learning through one language and transferring it to the other, a powerful cognitive strategy. And in the process, they are improving their academic skills in both languages. Translanguaging is an indispensable strategy for bilingual classrooms. It can also be used very successfully in multilingual classrooms. Translanguaging pedagogy is different with younger and older learners, but is beneficial for all ages. Implementing a translanguaging approach requires an openness to innovative practice as well as professional development and coaching. But to see it in action is to clearly understand the significant benefits for learners in terms of their own language development, their English development, their content learning, and their social development.
Okay, so now I want to, in addition to thinking about these translanguaging things that you can do, especially with entering and emerging students, you know, this is recommended in the English as a new language progressions, that this is exactly what we're supposed to be doing for our entering and emerging students. And it even lasts into low developing. So I want to show you where you could look for key text in other languages. So you know that the unit key text, the piece of literature they would like us to use is Inside Out and Back Again. And so I want to show you that if you go to worldcat.org, and you search by putting into the search box Inside Out and Back Again. You can also search by author. I usually do both. If it doesn't come up in the language that I'm looking for, then I try again, just using the author's name to see maybe if it comes up that way. And then once the book comes up, I click on this part that says view all formats and languages. Okay, so I go to WorldCat, I put in my title of the book that I'd like to find in other languages. When the book comes up, I click on view all formats and languages. And then under language, it tells me what languages the book has been translated into. And if I'm working with Chinese speakers, I'm happy because I find that the book exists in Chinese. Now my only challenge is to find it. And it also exists in Korean, and it also exists in French. At the top here, it shows me how many pages of different versions exist. And I want you to know sometimes it exists in Braille, sometimes it exists in large print. Large print might be, for our entering and emerging, they might like that. It might feel more accessible. So be thinking about how you might use even the varied English versions. It'll tell me if there's an audio version and so forth. And when I did this for Inside Out and Back Again, I found that there were large print versions, all in English. There was a Japanese version, there was a Persian version, French, Chinese, and Korean, and it was simplified Chinese. It was not traditional. And so if I'm working with those students of those language backgrounds, I'm happy. Or maybe some of the Haitian Creole speakers do know enough French to work with a French book. Some of the African language speakers might know enough French, and so forth. So I will go there and see if I can find it in the native language for my entering and emerging kids. And if I can, I would work between the native language and English. I would not look necessarily for simplified versions, okay? So that's why I'm trying to find it. Now, I don't give up. I didn't find Spanish. I was very disappointed because you know that a lot of our kids speak Spanish, and I didn't find it. So then I took the second step of going to book distributors. And I know, especially in New York City, Lectorum is a big publisher that produces books in Spanish. So I went there, I searched by author and I searched by title, and woe is me, I still didn't find it. It doesn't exist in Spanish. So I wouldn't be able to find this book in Spanish. And I took a third step, which was I went to Amazon Spain, which is this address, amazon.es, and it only existed in the Amazon Spain website in English. It didn't exist in Spanish. So I triple checked to make sure that I couldn't find this book in Spanish. And I would like to recommend to you that you follow the same procedure when you're looking for your literary work. I have no reason to believe that Todd Olson's piece has been translated or would be listed in World Catalog, but I do expect pieces of literature, novels, to be listed on World Catalog. So I did want to mention, if you're a 6th grade teacher using Wit and Wisdom, or you're using Expeditionary Learning, whether you're using either of these curricula, Bud Not Buddy is one of your books. And I did find that in Japanese, in Chinese, and I found it in Spanish. So I always start with worldcat.org to see if I can find the book. And then if I have to rule that out and I know it doesn't exist, then I know I can't read between the two languages. I have to work all in English. So the second thing that I want to show you before break is, how would I determine the reading level of any material, whether from a website or printed material that I've been given through my curriculum that doesn't come with a level? And so here, what I would do is I would go to this address, readabilityformulas.com. It's a free site. I have to copy and paste. You can copy and paste a PDF file, or if it is not as a PDF, and you can't copy and paste the text into the text box, you're going to have to type it into the box to get a Lexile level. Hope everybody's with me so far. So go to readability formulas, I type or I enter my text, whether from a website or a printed material, into the text box. I want to suggest that you use at least 300 to 500 words. Don't go less than that, and it's better if you use the full text. When I entered this full text, all 5 pages, I got these results. These are all the formulas that they use to calculate the reading level. And I tend to rely on the Flesch-Kincaid level. And it said it was 8th grade level. So it's right on the mark as an 8th grade level text. Some of the formulas said it was above grade level. The Gunning-Fogg said it was way above it, and so forth. Now, just for you techies out there that like investigating tech, your Microsoft Word, if you're still using Microsoft Word and not Google Docs, under tools, you can make active the Flesch-Kincaid readability formula, and then you can just highlight text and it'll tell you what level it is. But we can go to readability formulas as well. It produces something else that I think is useful as a language teacher, which is I put in 1,976 words, the full text, and it told me that among the words that I entered, almost 2,000 words that I entered, that 43% of the total text were unique words. Wow. That means that a lot of words that kids are going to bump into, they're only going to see it once. Okay. But it also tells me that some words are repeated. And then if I click on show the unique words and show the repeat words, I get the next page that I'm going to show you. So here are the unique words, words that only come up once. It shows me every single word. There were more. There were more than I could cut and paste and show you. And these are the repeated words. And you can see that Chinese was repeated 9 times. Century was only repeated 3 times. Vietnamese was repeated 19 times. So I can see based on frequency what words I can check and think about, well, which words might I want to teach my students? And yet I might decide, well, even though communism was only mentioned twice, it's a key concept word and I'm teaching it. Okay, so I'm still the person making the decisions, but these statistics might be useful to me. So I did want to mention them to you. Another way, if you don't like that way, and you say, well, I'd rather know the Lexile, thank you very much. Lexile has created a tool called Professional Analyzer that's free for teachers. And just like we would do on readability formulas, you can type or you can cut and paste the text here into Lexile, into a Lexile computer. And it computed the Lexile as 1060. And it also told me the mean sentence length was 13 words. Oh, I forgot to show you that back here. This shows me the average number of words per sentence and how many total sentences there are in this piece. That I'm going to have to read 149 sentences with kids, and the average sentence length is 13 words. And likewise, this shows me, hey, the average sentence length is 13 words. So I hope this will be useful to you, that if you have other materials you're using with students and you'd like to know how difficult they are, you can get a statistic on them. And what if I decide, oh, forget it, that is so far above where my students are? Then what am I going to do? What will I do if I feel that the text is too difficult? So some of you know this tool, which is called Rewordify, and it takes my original text, which is over here in the orange panel, and it rewordifies it for me over here, supposedly with simpler words. But I don't know if I would use this or not use it. I don't think it helps that much, because here, instead of saying a taut figure with a wispy goatee, it says a tightly stretched figure, which that doesn't even make sense, with a delicate goatee. But I think whether I say wispy or delicate, they're both going to need explanation. So I don't know that I would use rewordified text. I would try it and I would see if I think it's going to help my kids or not help my kids. But if I say to myself, I don't think this is going to help, it's still a word they don't know, then I wouldn't use it. But if I felt, oh, they know angry, they know noisy, that will help, then I might choose to use it. So you will decide on this, okay? You'll decide if it helps. And there's another tool, it's a different thing, so make sure you understand the difference. This is not going to reword the text. This provides other words for words that things might be too difficult. Text compactor shortens the text, and I decide how much to shorten it by. So I told the panel here, shorten it by 70%. Oh, I'm sorry, keep 70%. And what it does is it gets rid of some of the little details, but it does not change the phrasing at all. So it still says a taut figure with a wispy goatee. Okay, is everybody seeing that? So it will compact the text for me. And maybe had I said, just keep 20% of the text or 30% of the text, it would have been far less text that it kept. And then I would just help the kids understand that text, but it doesn't change the wording. So you're going to have to decide, is this helpful or not? But it is another tool that you might use. And then another tool that I'll show you before we take our 10-minute break is how to use summaries, and to use it either to preview a text before we're going to read the text from the novel, or we might read the text from the novel first and then use the summary to review what we've read. Or we might do everything. We might preview, then read the text, then come back and review, make sure the kids got all these ideas. And there is a site called Shmoop, I don't know how they came up with that, .com, that does a lot of this summarizing. And so this is summarizing the text that I'm about to show you. Today is a day called Tet, which is like New Year's Day, but lunar, meaning it's based on the moon. It's a special day, blah, blah, blah. It's believed that the way you behave on Tet determines your entire year. So there's things you can't do, like sweep or splash water. You must smile all day long to invite happiness. And then I highlighted for you phrases like the coolest thing of all, though. I might take that away for second language readers and just say Tet is everyone's birthday. What does that mean? Well, the narrator is 10 years old, blah, blah, blah. Then I might take away a line like ain't no shame in the male embroidery game, because it's just going to be in my way. So when I find the summary, I might take away parts or reword it further to my liking. And then it would say, in this culture, men are supposed to bring luck. So her brother was asked to rise early to bless the house first by touching his feet to the ground. And then we would read this vignette, which I put on the Padlet, 1975, Year of the Cat. So before we go to break, let me play this for you just so that you can hear this. And I would like you to think about the rate of the audio tape. Like, is it slow enough? Would students be able to follow along using this audio version? And when we come back from break, I'll show you where I got the audio version, and we can talk a little bit more about why this might or might not work.
Part 1, Saigon. 1975, Year of the Cat. Today is Tet, the first day of the lunar calendar. Every Tet, we eat sugary lotus seeds and glutinous rice cakes. We wear all new clothes, even underneath. Mother warns how we act today foretells the whole year. Everyone must smile, no matter how we feel. No one can sweep, for why sweep away hope? No one can splash water, for why splash away joy? Today, we all gain 1 year in age, no matter the date we were born. That, our New Year's, doubles as everyone's birthday. Now I am 10, learning to embroider circular stitches, to calculate fractions into percentages, to nurse my papaya tree to bear many fruits. But last night I pouted when Mother insisted one of my brothers must rise first this morning to bless our house, because only male feet can bring luck. An old, angry knot expanded in my throat. I decided to wake before dawn and tap my big toe to the tile floor first. Not even Mother, sleeping beside me, knew.
Okay, so hopefully,
February.
oh, sorry. Okay, so hopefully you can see that that rate of speech was pretty good, even for my beginners. And if I had them listen to it, so first I would show them the summary because I'm working with entering and emerging. This is going to be my close read of an original level text that's assigned to 8th graders. Then I would return, review, see if they got all of those meanings, reinforce these important points that happen in this vignette of the novel. And then I might go back and let them listen again. And one of the strategies that we would use with entering and emerging ELLs is for them to listen multiple times, for them to get so used to this passage that they would come to know it very well. And then I'll show you that I also went through as a language teacher and tried to decide, well, wow, this is a lot of language that entering is not going to know. Lunar and calendar and lotus and sugary and rice cakes and glutinous and clothes and underneath and what will I teach them? So I tried to bundle the language that's part of this to see what kind of bundles I could make. And the first bundle that I made was all things having to do with time that were mentioned in the poem, like dawn is a time, 1975 is time, my birthday is a time, day and date, and today is a time. Then I looked at foods, and then I went to verbs. And you can see that I found a ton of verbs. Then I went to the pronouns, wondering, well, maybe I should work on that. Then I went to things that had to do with setting the floor and the house, and then body parts like feet and toe and throat. So if I'm working with entering, let's think about them. I got kids that just arrived 2 weeks ago. What will I teach them? And I decided, having looked at everything, that I would work heavily on verbs, and the black verbs would be the ones that I would really work on teaching them directly in English. And I might let them translate the other verbs in Word Hippo, which I will show you later, but it's just like Google Translate. This is way too many words. And you might say that even the ones that I've selected in black are too many words, but I would check and see if they know any of these words. Like maybe they're only here 3 weeks, but they know the word eat, and maybe they know the word smile. So I will see which of these words they know, and then I'll decide which words that I'm going to teach them. And as we work on the poem, I would explain other things, but they wouldn't be the words that I would assign. So I hope I'm explaining that okay to you, that I have to unpack this vignette. It is a lot of language. Another strategy that I could use is to drop out verses. I could drop out verses to shorten this, but like I can drop out, I'm 10 and I'm learning to calculate percentages, fractions into percentages. Maybe I just want to leave that out. Like, I don't want to go there with my entering students. It's too much. And it's not important to getting the meaning of the overall. It adds something, but it's not critical to understanding this text. And maybe I'll take this away. I don't know. You're going to decide your own things. But I would not take away the words hope and joy, because this whole piece is about a new year and having hope and wanting to have joy in the new year. And I'm sure we all felt this current year, right? That we had a lot of hopes for 2021, and we're certainly hoping for joy and not misery. So another way I could work is dropping out these passages. Okay, so let's go ahead and take our 10-minute break now. I am a clock watcher, and I'm expecting you to come back at 10:40. Please come back at 10:40. I will begin at 10:40.